Aaron Rodgers seems to be in a much better mood so far this training camp. Unless I've missed something over the last several years, and I don't think that I have, but he seems to be in a better, lighthearted, more jovial mood so far this camp. He's been messing around with teammates, pulling some pranks, even messing with Matt LaFleur. The change of scenery at head coach was good for a ton of reasons, and one of the biggest ones being the mood and the attitude of Rodgers. And it's early to tell for sure, but I would say that the early returns are that Rodgers and LaFleur get along pretty well, and there seems to be some mutual respect between the two, and that can only mean good things for the Packers. This is the Aaron Michael Show, alternative Wisconsin sports media. Not biased, not afraid. AaronMichaelShow@gmail.com if you want to email the program. The Twitter handle, @WisconsinAaron. So the Brewers get a win last night, 9-7, and it was another teeth-pulling win for Milwaukee. They just can't have it easy. They can never just go and get a breakaway win. Hader went 2 innings, let the tying run come up in the 9th, ended up getting the last out, and then we called it a night. Hader, by the way, goes those extra innings, threw over 20 pitches. Now he probably won't pitch again in the series. The Brewers don't have enough good bullpen arms. Hader almost always has to go multiple innings, which means he's out for the remainder of a series in this case, or the first few games of the next series if he pitches towards the end of a series. Counsell is taking what he has, and he's trying to make the most out of it. And the lack of quality arms that the Brewers have is killing this team. And it's probably what's going to be their downfall ultimately. And the fact that they don't have good starting pitching either. But again, I say the lack of quality arms between the starters and the bullpen. They just don't have enough. And Zach Davies goes on the injured list, 10-day IL yesterday with back tightness. They're running through the depth that they got at the trade deadline. Stearns, we wanted to get a quality arm, but we needed to add depth. Now, what the Brewers ended up doing at the trade deadline was they didn't buy or sell, and they didn't set themselves up very good, not for the rest of this season. At least not on paper. They're going to keep butts in the seats at Miller Park at the beginning of Packers season because they have not yet been rendered irrelevant. Still a few games out of first place. And, we gotta hang on. The Brewers fans, you just gotta stay positive. You gotta stick with this team because they're right where they need to be, within 3 or 4 games of first place. And they'll get the starting pitching back. They'll get the reinforcements, so nothing to worry about. They didn't do themselves anything at the trade deadline. They didn't plan for their future. They didn't try to revamp the minor league system by trading away some of the guys, particularly Moustakas, Grandal. I'm not saying that they had to sell, but you got to buy or sell, don't you? They didn't do either one. So they didn't get any better for this season, so they're probably going to miss the playoffs, and then they'll probably be without Moustakas and Grandal after this season, or at least without one of them, or both. And they won't have anything to show for this year, except for missing the playoffs, which I believe will be the case. But so they didn't buy to make the playoffs, and then they also didn't sell, so we go into next season with still what everyone considers to be the worst minor league system in baseball. Folks, it's very, very frustrating what the Brewers are doing, and it is all an attempt by our buddy Mark A. to make money. They didn't sell so that butts would stay in the seats at Miller Park and they could continue to rake in some money, knowing that they're probably not going to make the playoffs, and if they do, they're going to be knocked out right away anyway. And the best that they're going to be able to hope for at this point, I would still say, would be a wild card spot. And you watch this team, they're just not very good. We'll get into examples of that later, but I don't think they're going to make that anyway. Anyways, the Packers. So they had a joint practice yesterday, and again today, which is happening right now, with the Houston Texans ahead of their first preseason game this Thursday night. We had some excitement. There's a fight. There were some good and bad takeaways from practice, as you would expect. So the fight, Jay Sternberger, rookie drafted this year by the Packers, was hit by cornerback Lonnie Johnson Jr., and some guys on the Packer offense took action by going after him. The guy from the Texans, Lonnie Johnson Jr., was removed and did not come back. After practice, LaFleur said that he was good with his teammates going over and sticking up for him. And even outside of that, there was some other physical chippy play throughout the course of the practice. And I guess a lot of people have taken exception to that. I even saw people calling for practice to end. Now, there are a few guys that got banged up for the Packers. But it is football. You know how things usually go in the first... think about this for a second. You know how things usually go in the first preseason game? There's usually some chippiness. There are usually fights right at the beginning because guys are amped up and ready to go out and tackle after a whole offseason of not being able to hit somebody. And you're starting to get sick going against your own teammates day in and day out, seeing the same guys, not being able to hit anyone if you're a defensive player. So it wasn't the first preseason game, but it was the first time that either of these teams have been able to see an actual opponent, people not on their team. I didn't think it was a big deal what happened. I mean, this Lonnie Johnson Jr. is a jackass. And we'll get into that and why in a moment. But overall, I don't think it was a big deal what happened. Sounds like LaFleur and Bill O'Brien talked about it, got stuff worked out. But I mean, it is what it is. You have guys on these two teams who play football, who are trained to hit, who want to hit. That's the key. They want to hit. And it's going to happen when you have a joint practice. I mean, for years you watch joint practices, not here in Green Bay, because it's been like since Noah and the flood, since the Packers have had one, but you watch other teams do it. There are generally a lot of fights, and obviously you don't want anyone to get hurt in practice, especially by contact that isn't supposed to be there. You get enough injuries in meaningless preseason games, but at the same time, I don't think it's all bad what happened. You get a chance for your teammates to stick up for you. All that stuff builds team chemistry. Yeah, I mean, so some of the people I saw on Twitter were outraged by this. Don't be a pansy about it and say, oh my gosh, we need to stop practice right now before somebody gets seriously hurt. Oh, this is just getting ridiculous. I mean, it's football. Let them play. Let them fight if they don't like something. And let it build team chemistry. Nothing wrong with that. Though, one of the biggest things, I remember I told you this Lonnie Johnson Jr. is a jackass. One of the bigger issues here was that after he hit Sternberger, he stood over him, taunting and flexing. I mean, that's kind of sad, isn't it? The dude wasn't expecting to get hit. So he was literally a sitting duck, and you popped him so hard his helmet flew off, and then you stand over him and gloat like you just stuffed him to win the Super Bowl. But it wasn't the Super Bowl. It was a joint practice in August where there wasn't supposed to be contact and where the player who got hit wasn't expecting any contact. So congratulations, moron. He also posted a photo on Instagram last night gloating about the hit again. Hopefully, I mean, I'm all in favor. I'm okay with some contact. I mean, I'm okay really with anything that happens. I say let them police themselves. So this is what I hope happens. Hopefully, someone from the Packers lays this guy out today. If I were the coach, which many are thankful I'm not, I'd send our guys, the Packers out there to do that. Somebody to lay him out. So, we'll see. Other news and notes from Packer camp. Seems like Rashawn Gary, first pick. Seems like Gary's getting a lot of work with the first team defense from what I can see. It seems like he's instantly adding a lot of depth to the defensive pass rush. You know, bringing in the Smiths, adding Gary is huge. That's an instant upgrade, at least with the Smiths. It's an instant upgrade over the combination of Clay Matthews and Nick Perry. By the way, Nick Perry's still a free agent. thank you, Ted Thompson, in your infinite wisdom for giving Perry that massive contract. Guy had one good season where he wasn't hurt. Didn't do much when he was healthy. And he was hardly ever healthy. So that was one of the Ted highlights. But much better now. Matthews, he could still put up some numbers. He'd still get in for some sacks and some tackles. But what I noticed about him, actually for some time, was that at the end of the season, his numbers would look okay. I mean, he'd get some sacks. But how many were actually impact plays? How much of it was garbage time? Or just things that didn't help lead to a victory? There's a huge difference between good numbers and making plays that really impact your team toward winning. And Matthews, in my estimation, was not helping the Packers win. And really, in some cases, I think you can make the argument that he was helping the Packers lose. Or the first few games of the season. Remember week 1? No, not week 1. Week 2? Well, week 1 too, didn't he? Yeah. Yes, that's right. He had the roughing the passer penalties late in games, which we don't have to rehash that entire thing. The rules are stupid. Yet, the rules are the rules, stupid or not, need to be followed, or you get penalized for them, as they did with Matthews. But at any rate, it is it's an upgrade this year. Adding the Smiths, and we're talking about pass rush, adding the Smiths, Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith especially, and Gary has been adding some depth to that, along with Fackrell, who was their best pass rusher last season. Now he may be number 3, number 4, as far as pass rushers go. So that's obviously not a bad thing. When you take your number 1 guy from last year, who was pretty solid, Fackrell was pretty good, and you make him your number 3, number 4 guy, that's a big time upgrade. Let's see. Kicking competition. Mason Crosby was 4 out of 5 yesterday. Missed 1 kick. That was just under 50 yards. Sam Ficken was 5 for 5. Keep an eye on Kevin King. He's out with a hamstring injury. Through 2 NFL seasons, he's only played 15 games. Obviously, everyone agrees that King has a very high ceiling and that if healthy, he's good. But the key words are if healthy. Meanwhile, while he's out with injury again, Tony Brown is making some strides at cornerback. He went undrafted a couple of years ago after some failed drug tests and other mistakes. But he's looked very good for the Packers. So he's been practicing and moved up in King's absence. Tramon Williams, who himself was undrafted, has really been trying to mentor him, it sounds like. So that's a good thing. I think the Packers have a nice mix of young guys and some veterans on this team. Especially on the defensive side, I think they got some leadership. Amos has been around for a few years. You picked him up, and you're going to put him next to a rookie with Savage. You got Zadarius Smith, 5th year in the league. Preston Smith has some experience as well. And you put those with the younger guys, whether it be Oren Burks at inside linebacker, Fackrell at outside. You got your core of players there on defense. You got Rashawn Gary coming in for the young guys, but then it's like for every young guy, or you have a veteran to offset them and to help them in some way, shape, or form. It just seems like a good mix on defense, especially. But back to King. Even if the Packers keep King, which you would assume that they would, though Gutekunst has made some surprising moves, so you don't know. But even if the Packers keep King, here's the deal. You know that whoever you have behind him is equally as important as King, because whoever's behind him is going to be playing when King gets hurt, which is going to happen. It's already happened. And it's just like whoever's behind Brian Bulaga on the depth chart is equally as important as Bulaga, because inevitably Bulaga will be hurt. This is an interesting thing. I've seen several people suggest this theory. Now, I'm not entirely sure what to think about it. I'm not huge into conspiracy theories. I do believe some things. You know what? We are out of time right now. Hold on. We'll be right back. We're going to take a break. Aaron Michaels Show. And we'll be back. Hi, welcome back. Aaron Michaels Show. Going to segment number 2 on a Tuesday. Frustrated Wisconsin sports fans, welcome on the program. You won't get talked down to, laughed at, or ridiculed for being upset. Not like other stations or programs that you tune into. If you want everything happy all the time, and if you feel threatened by criticism of your teams, it's probably not going to be the place for you. There are plenty of happy Wisconsin sports programs and websites I'm sure you can fill your time with. Start with the official websites of all Wisconsin sports teams. But here, you will get it straight, no bias, and no fear. Now, I've seen a few people suggest this theory, and I'm not sure what to think about it. Not, like I said before the break, not huge into conspiracy theories, but I do believe some things. I just wanted to mention this for one moment. But this whole business, I mentioned Davies going on the injured list for the Brewers. This whole business where Brewer players are performing horribly and then they end up on the IL, latest Davies, he hasn't been good in recent starts. The Brewers already have guys on the injured list, but he's been pitching and suddenly he's on the list as well. You know, you go back to early in the season, Shaw is awful and still isn't very good. He's still terrible. But he was awful early in the season too, and all of a sudden he has a wrist injury. He takes 1 or 2 days off, and all of a sudden he's ready to play again. And he plays in the minors, where he still was bad. And then he comes back up when he's healthy, quote unquote, and he's still bad. So he gets sent back down. There have been several players who have seemed okay, and then suddenly they end up on the injury list, and it's usually players who are performing badly. Now, which one is coming first? Are they performing badly so they go on the injured list, or are they injured so they're performing badly? I'm not 100% buying into the conspiracy theory that, and I don't know what the Brewers would exactly be. Well, I suppose if the theory were true, the Brewers would try to be putting in a built-in excuse for poor performance, if this were the case. So I've seen some people suggesting that maybe the Brewers are just trying to save face, lessen the blow of a very disappointing season by saying that guys are injured and putting them on the injury list when it really isn't that serious, just to create that built-in excuse for not performing up to standard. And I don't think it's been the case in every one. Like Woodruff, you're not going to stick him on the IL when he's the only decent pitcher that you have. But the Shaw thing, even early on this season, I didn't really believe fully that he was hurt. Now, I wouldn't say it as a sure thing because I don't know for sure, and I'm not going to fully accuse someone of being uninjured if they actually are hurt, and I don't know for sure. But it wouldn't have surprised me if Shaw wasn't hurt. And it was just a way to cover up his bad play because he hasn't gotten any better, and he had a nice little stretch where he hit well for a couple of weeks in the minors, but that was it. He was bad in Milwaukee. He was injured for like 3 days. And then he played in San Antonio for a bit after he was healthy. Still couldn't hit after he was healthy. And then they brought him back up after he was healthy and sent Hira down. And he still couldn't hit. Which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that was a stupid move. And every time Hira gets a base hit or a home run, it makes Stearns look like a fool for sending him down for Shaw early in the season. And it's easy to sit and criticize a GM after the fact, but here's what I want to do for this. The reason I bring that up is to say this. It was the wrong move that Stearns made to send Hira down for Shaw. It was the wrong move. So in case you were wondering, if you're a Stearns apologist, in case you're wondering, he can make stupid moves. He can make mistakes. And I'm not saying, well, we got to fire Stearns because he made that one mistake. No, but if you're a Stearns apologist, God, this guy's such a damn genius. He never makes mistakes. He does everything good. Everything is well. Well, that was a mistake. So Stearns is capable of making mistakes, and that is an example of one of them. But it wouldn't have surprised me if Shaw wasn't actually hurt. I don't know. It just seems fishy in some instances, but we'll see. Maybe someone in the state media would like to do some investigative journalism into the Brewers and really dig deep. like that would happen. The media in the state is too busy being the PR department to have any time to do actual journalism. We're going to take a break, and we will be right back. Aaron Michaels Show. All right, Aaron Michaels Show. We are back. We have returned. If you want to get a hold of the show, AaronMichaelsShow@gmail.com is the email address. Also, on Twitter, at Wisconsin Aaron. The fight yesterday, Jace Sternberger gets his helmet popped off on a cheap shot by one of the Texans cornerbacks. The nice thing, by the way, is that Sternberger probably never had so much media gathered around his locker as he did after practice yesterday. A national hero, a local icon defender of the little guy. He's a true American hero. And Lonnie Johnson Jr., the guy who hits him, he's really a jackass. Okay, onward we go. Prime example, folks, of why the Brewers are not a good team, and it was on display last night. They did win the game, but first inning, let me take you back. First inning fly ball hit to shallow left field with a runner on first base. Grisham catches the ball, tries to double up the runner at first, but Thames got caught too far off of first, so he wasn't able to get back and get his foot on the bag to get the double play. Good teams make that play more times than not. Even the guys on Fox Sports Wisconsin, who are never critical, they are the essence of cheerleaders for the Brewers. They're just an extension of the PR department. They aren't even announcers, they are PR people. But even they said that the Brewers probably should have made that play. So when they're saying it, you know it really should have happened. You know it really should have gotten done. When Bill Schroeder starts criticizing, you know you're not a very good team. But that's a play that good teams make a large chunk of the time. Good teams do. And the Brewers constantly miss plays like that. And they miss routine plays on a normal basis. A few innings later, you then see Keston Hiura make an error on a routine throw. At other times, people are just not where they're supposed to be. Other balls get booted. Just errors and mental mistakes galore, almost on a nightly basis. And nothing about that is a good team. Good teams don't go 63 innings, or whatever it ended up being, without scoring multiple runs in an inning. That just doesn't happen. Brian Anderson on the broadcast last night says that the Brewers are trying to get through the ninth inning with no drama. That is because every win that the Brewers have is like getting teeth pulled. They just can't have a comfortable pull-away win. They never have those games where they can just come out and win it easily and show that they are the superior team to their opponent on any given night. And that's because they are not superior to many teams. Yelich hit 2 more home runs last night. A 4-hit night. 1 homer into the river. He's basically a baseball hitting machine. And they need to get pieces around him. That's if they intend on keeping him past this contract. They need to get people around him. They need to win a World Series while Yelich is in his prime, because you've got one of your biggest pieces in place. But that would require Atanasio to give the okay to Stearns to go all in. And in 15 years of Mark A. owning the team, that hasn't happened. So, will it? Will it happen? I mean, I don't know. After 15 years, it hasn't happened. And after being just 1 game away from going to the World Series last year, it didn't happen. I mean, I get that they wanted to try out, okay, so let's rewind here for a moment. Let's go back to last year. And we end the season 1 game away, NLDS, against the Dodgers. Game 7, you lose at home. Off-season comes. I understand Mark A. and David Stearns wanting to try to go into this season relying on Peralta and on Burns. and I'm Woodruff. That makes sense to me. They are the cheaper option, and they all performed well down the stretch last year. I don't blame the Brewers for going into this season with them and not signing anyone. Okay? But there came a point, and it was very early this season, where it became abundantly clear that those guys, except for Woodruff, those guys were not performing, Peralta and Burns, not performing the way that you wanted them to, the way that you expected them to. We knew that early. So, where was the adjustment then from Mark A. and David Stearns? Where was the adjustment to fix that? To fill the holes that suddenly became Peralta and Burns. The last shot that you had at it to fix that mistake was the trade deadline. And you didn't buy or sell. It's just very, very frustrating. Ricky Weeks, J.J. Hardy, Trevor Hoffman are going to go onto the Brewers Wall of Honor. So to be on that wall, the qualification is that you have to have a pulse and play for Milwaukee for a few years. At that point, you're golden. You're on. You are on. Weeks, a .246 career hitter. Ricky Weeks, being a good player, was one of the biggest crocs and media bias lies of all time in Wisconsin sports history. He was fully propped up by the biased Wisconsin sports media. .246 career batting average. Ron Renicky asked him to play some outfield when the team was in desperate need, and he said, no, I'm a second baseman. The dude was a Class A jackass, and he wasn't a good baseball player, but the media propped him up for his entire career. You know, I'd never heard, and still have never heard, anyone get so excited about a ground out, a hard ground out hit by Weeks. I mean, if he'd hit a hard ground ball to the third baseman for a 5-3 putout, they jump all over stuff like that. Wow, my God. Did you see how well he's swinging the bat? Wow, Ricky's really starting to swing the bat. It was really sad. And such an obvious bias because the Brewers gave him a stupid contract, which in today's day and age is nothing. But at the time, it was a nice contract, and that's why they never had to set. I mean, he would go through slumps where he was just awful. Always was propped up. Always. Wow, what a great player. Tough as nails. Good as they come. Oh, he'll stand in there at second base and he'll turn the double play even with a runner coming in his face. And my God, did you see that line drive out to the center field? Well, I think Ricky's really about to break out of it. That's what it was. But the revered Ricky Weeks going to be going on to the Brewers Wall of Honor. J.J. Hardy had a .256 career batting average. At least he was really good on defense. Hoffman obviously is a Hall of Famer. He wasn't in Milwaukee for long, but numbers-wise, he deserves anything he gets, including on the Brewers Wall of Honor. I mean, unless I'm missing something, missing the point of the Wall of Honor and the qualifications for it. But what qualifies guys to be on there except for Hoffman? I don't know. Those were the glory days. Yes, for the Brewer organization. The days of Weeks and Corey Hart. Bill Hall was there. I remember yeah. Who could forget? Really. Amazing days, weren't they? I mean, those rival the days of Richie Sexson, Jeremy Burnett's. I mean, I'm drawing a blank. My mind has there's too many glory years for the Brewers. Okay, Wisconsin State Journal. Jason Wilde, Green Bay Packers writer. Here's the headline. Insisting he's not old and slow, Jimmy Graham vows to be the player Packers expected him to be. Talking about Rodgers and Graham, Wilde writes, both are highly motivated to make sure Graham is a much bigger factor in the offense this season. Yes! And why would that be? because he wasn't a part of the offense last season. I knew it as soon as Graham got signed. People are coming up to me all fired up, all excited. The Packers finally have a big body tight end, an athlete who they can use in the red zone. Can you imagine how much damage Rodgers and Graham are going to do, especially in the red zone? Oh, my goodness. Everyone was so excited. I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be anything the whole time, but it ended up being a big giant thud and a dud, and nothing happened. And I knew that was going to happen because the genius McCarthy was in charge. And, we couldn't use Graham the way that he'd been used his entire career because that worked really well, and everyone knows that that's coming. And McCarthy was too damn smart to do that, to let the other team know what was coming and to do what worked. I mean, if you got sakes, if you do what worked, the other team knows what you're going to do, and they're going to try to stop it. That was the McCarthy line of thinking. It was. You can say whatever the hell you want to say about McCarthy, but that was his line of thinking. If something works, we can't do it, because if something works, the other team expects that we're going to do that. Well, no duh. It's generally what people do. Coaches go... You know what the biggest reason most coaches get fired for is? In any sport? The biggest reason that coaches get fired is because they can't find what works. They can't figure out what works. McCarthy gets fired because he knew what worked and wouldn't do it. Just asinine. They didn't use Graham. 1 year with McCarthy, and people are asking the question, is Jimmy Graham washed up? Huh, that sounds familiar. 1 year under the genius. Is Graham washed up? Huh, I don't know. What does that sound like? Eddie Lacy's career? A couple of years under McCarthy. Wow, Eddie Lacy really, career just did a dumpster dive. And they all have one thing in common. Mike McCarthy. No, Jimmy Graham's not washed up. He had a dunce for a head coach. He's not washed up. He had a nitwit, a numbskull, a blockhead, putting in an offensive scheme that did not include Graham. He's not washed up, folks, I'm telling you. We can go back to this program later on in the season, and I'll replay some of the clips for you. Jimmy Graham, as long as he stays healthy, will be the he'll be the comeback player of the year for the Packers. I would venture to say he will be an All-Pro this year. And everyone is going to be astonished because they thought he was washed up, just didn't have it anymore, while completely ignoring the fact that he played in McCarthy's horrible offense. As long as Matt LaFleur has a few functioning brain cells, Graham will indeed have a very good season with Aaron Rodgers, because the two of them should have been and will be a great combination. There's absolutely no reason. Graham's not washed up, folks. There's no reason why him and Rodgers shouldn't put up massive numbers if LaFleur has a few functioning brain cells. Now, the Packer offense is going to be a little bit behind installing a new system, new offensive head coach, new offensive coordinator. But when this offense gets it going, I think they're going to be very good. I think it's going to be a very pleasant joy to watch. They have some good playmakers in place, good solid offensive line. They can block for the pass, and not shabby at run blocking either. Anchored by the best left tackle, well, actually the best offensive lineman in football with Bakhtiari. You got Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, Jimmy Graham at tight end, Adams, Valdez-Scantling, Allison, and more. Kumaro at wide receiver. Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams at running back. The Packers have a lot of diversity and a lot of different things that they can do on offense. A lot of talent. They have a lot of things that they can do. No doubt about it. All right, that's going to do it for today. We are out of time. We'll be back tomorrow. The Aaron Michaels Show. Alternative Wisconsin sports media. Unbiased, unafraid, as we showed today.